I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost is with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and between the past 2 days, I've had a total, maybe, if even 6 hours of sleep. I was at the last rally in Grand Rapids, you guys know, and I got home about 4:30, and last night I once again got home about 4:30 because I was in Novi at the big celebration party with Team Trump and Mike Rogers and Michigan GOP. And unfortunately, Mike Rogers, it looks like he didn't end up winning the Senate, but Donald Trump ended up not only taking Michigan, but he took the whole darn shebang. He absolutely did it. He killed it. And we were so excited. And it was, a hard fought victory for Team Trump. And I was really happy because my eldest sister, she works on the Trump campaign, and she's technically it's the RNC, but they cannibalized the whole thing. So the RNC is the Trump campaign. So she was the head of like urban engagement, and it's been a hard, I'm gonna say a hard whole year because it's been a good year, but recently, you guys might know my mom passed away, and so it was just a good high an accomplishment. I was really glad for her. I'm so glad that Harris lost. So glad that she lost. And obviously Donald Trump is going to be the better of the two. And if he was a very good president in the first term that he ran, and this is like the only second time in history where a president has won another term that wasn't consecutive. So this is really groundbreaking history being made stuff. I have made this reference in the past with Donald Trump's presidency journey being like a new hope, and then it was Empire Strikes Back, and now it's Return of the Jedi. And I've seen people make memes or whatever with the different kind of imagery with Trump first getting inaugurated, and then Biden winning, and then fight, and that being like the Return of the Jedi moment and stuff. And he's made a comeback, and quite a comeback. And with all the things that have happened to him, what the deep state have done to him, and that stuff is like wiped away. Jack Smith is cannot be investigating him anymore because his policy isn't to, you can't investigate or go after a sitting president like that. So Trump doesn't even have to fire him. Fox News reported that that's about to be over. The Fonnie Willis stuff, of course, in Atlanta, when Georgia stuff, that was falling apart because she couldn't keep it in her pants. So there was all that corruption around that case. And of course, the Letitia James case has falling apart with appeals. And the courts were like, this doesn't even make any sense. So, that's falling apart on their end. So there's the Bragg indictment that I'm sure will be overturned. And that's the thing people try to like really point to, and is like, he's a felon. And I've had to say to many people, can you please explain in your own words what you think he did? What do you think he did? What crime do you think he committed? And people don't have good explanations. And maybe if he did something that was really egregious, like, I don't know, droning some aid workers and some kids, like Biden did, the felon thing would really, really stick and really disturb people. But since we know that he was basically persecuted and prosecuted for political reasons, it just makes people rally around Trump all the more. So it is really an incredible story. It's an incredible story for Trump. It's an incredible story for his family. It's an incredible story for America. It's an incredible story for alternative media that had so much to do with this election. It's an incredible story for Elon Musk, who put so much on the line, invested so much money, and I can totally understand why, because Biden Harris administration, has not been kind, and they are revving up, like Rachel Maddow and other people were talking about, like possibly going after Elon if he, after all this stuff. So he put himself out there and made a difference. And I'm glad that, he was able to do that because the left has had George Soros and his money, and now they have like his son, and they're proudly taking pictures with them, and they're proudly like in his pocket and stuff. And so I don't want to hear any nonsense from them when Elon Musk was like, I want to preserve liberty and freedom, and Trump is going to be my guy because he's at least trying to push those values while the left is not. So overall, a very historic night, a very incredible night, and we should have a good show today. I see people say that they're relieved. um Michigan did declare. Glad Kamala Harris is going home. Yeah, so thank you guys for being with me today. I see you guys in the chat, and those of you watching live, I'm sure some of you will go ahead and watch it back later. Um, but before we get into everything, I just want to thank everybody, who watches, everybody who comments, and I know I thank you guys quite a bit, but um, you know, I this isn't the only reason why, election time in politics isn't the only reason why I talk about what I talk about. But I've had a lot of feelings and complicated feelings and criticisms for Trump and other folks, and I'll continue to have them. I'll continue to say whatever I have to say. But I am glad that he did win, and because every time, even though he would do something might upset me, I'm like, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they're so much worse. And the system fighting against Trump, bearing down on Trump, willing to do anything to win. I told you guys that really concerned me, that it frightened me. It frightened me what they're willing to do to obtain power, and it frightened me what they would be willing to do if they got away with it. Like, how much bolder would they be if Kamala Harris got to win a presidential campaign after usurping the sitting president of the United States, forcing him out, and not winning a single primary vote, and only having to campaign for like 100 something days after she didn't even do an interview for 40 of those first days. What was elections going to be like and going forward in the future if you can just replace somebody after a bad debate like that? And it was just so many reasons why it was important for her to lose. So I'm glad that we got the result that we did, and I hope that there's some promises that Donald Trump lives up to. Major ones like, fixing the border. I suspect he'll replace Alito and Thomas, assuming that they both, just retire, and they're probably going to do that sooner rather than later. So the Democrats don't have some kind of rallying cry during the midterms to stop him from replacing them. So he'll probably have to do it all, within the next 2 years. And that makes me relieved that Joe Biden didn't get to replace Clarence Thomas for obvious reasons. He was the one, pushing the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas. And it just didn't feel like justice, if he was going to be the person able to do that. And I certainly didn't want Kamala Harris to replace, those justices either. And even if they didn't retire or die, there was the possibility that they would do court reforms and impeach them, so they or just pack the court so they could change the dynamic of the court. But it's bittersweet. Like, I'm relieved about that, but I'm sad because they're really good justices. If you could copy Clarence Thomas and just click, copy, paste, and do it about 9 times or whatever, that'd be like the perfect court. And I just hope whoever he picks is at least that conservative going forward, and they're not duds and stuff. So it's just a pretty surreal, incredible day. I'm looking forward to what comes next. I'm assuming that I'm going to get to go to the inauguration and the ball because I was able to go to those last time. And so that'll be fun going there, assuming all of that and finding a new dress, gonna slim down a little bit. But it's just a great time. But I thank you guys for watching and commenting and being here. There's a lot of people who offer political commentary. Thank you for being weirdos that want to listen to political commentary every day. Some of you are in here every day watching, or every other day. And if you can't watch live, you watch it back later. And some people were writing me messages, sending me messages last night saying, that they're so grateful for my page, for me exposing different things on the left, and they very much, have recommended my page to other people, and it just means the world to me. I know some of you have gone the extra mile and have actually gone to my website and given donations, or you guys give super chats or stickers or stars. There's Don Dodd. She always, she gives stars very frequently on like Facebook and stuff. So I see you guys, and I appreciate you so much for believing in what I do, and I believe is important. And I believe that I've made an impact, and I believe I could do more, if I had a bigger reach as well. And you guys are a part of that. And I don't want to get emotional. And I'm just thinking about my mom a little bit, and I know she was really proud of what I did. And when it was election day, she would call, make sure that I sent her information on all the races, because the big ones and stuff, but the local stuff that's nonpartisan. So she would just call and give my 2 cents, and let me make sure there was a list for her and stuff. And she definitely would have voted for Trump if she was still with us. And oh my gosh, she didn't like Kamala. So so it was just a lot of emotions, lots of feelings and stuff going around. But I'm sure you guys are like in a daze and a whirlwind stuff, and hopefully you guys have had more sleep than I have had, because again, my sleep was like 6 hours. But anyway, I'm gonna play some clips of some freakouts from last night and really bad takes from journalists and so on. And but before I play that, again, you guys can go to blacktnews.com, check out the content, my website, articles, videos, etc. You guys, I'm probably not gonna be able to post it tonight, but because I have Bible study after I get done with you guys, and I think I'm gonna go live on TikTok. If you guys are on TikTok, I think I'm gonna go live on TikTok when I'm done with. I actually, assuming I have time, I have no idea how long the show is gonna be today. I have no idea. I'd like for it to be an hour. I'm doubting it's gonna be an hour. It might be 1.5, or we could go to 2. I have lots of thoughts, and I will have lots of commentary about some of the freakouts that I've seen. But yeah, just you guys can. But the article I'm going to write is going to be about why me as a Black woman, in Michigan, decided to vote for Trump, because they're really mad at white people and Hispanic voters and all this stuff. And so I'm not into the I don't usually go as a Black woman. Like, I know my show is called Black Tea. It's my perspective as a Black conservative, but people notice that I don't push that a lot, but it's not like I didn't notice that other people noticed. So I'm responding, I guess. And I don't think like, as a Black woman, this is why I should vote for Trump. As a Black woman, this is why I should vote for Kamala Harris. And that's not how I vote or whatever. And people would bring that up to me all the time. Like, as a Black woman, how can you do this? As a Black woman, how can you do that? I'm like, you don't want to go that route with me. You don't want to go that route with me, because if you want to go that route with me, let's talk about how like abortion disproportionately kills Black children. People talk about systemic racism. That's like the number one thing, but you guys don't want to talk about that, So I just really want to say it's not about race, it's not about gender. It was really about the issues. And I it's funny watching Ben Shapiro's commentary. He has pretty good commentary, but I wish he would stop saying it's not so much about Kamala and she's an empty suit. No, it wasn't just her that was the issue. It was a system, for sure. It was a Democrat Party. It was our overall values. But don't get it twisted. It was personal. It was personal. I don't personally like Kamala Harris, and I didn't want her to win. I didn't want her policies, her plans to be reflected in the nation at large. I didn't want her to try to replicate anything that she did in California. It was personal. I didn't like her. Don't get it twisted. Don't get twisted. I'm offended people saying it's sexism. I'm offended people saying it's racism. I'm so offended by that. It's her. I don't like her. It's personal. Please take it personally, Kamala. Please take it personally. And it's not even personal. There's some character flaws and some things that she did that were distasteful. Things that I can point out that I don't like about her. And there's things I can point about Donald Trump. That's personal things or whatever he might have did or things he said or behavioral things that I can point out and not like too. But the policies that she has tried to implement, I didn't want her to win. I didn't want her to win. I wanted her to lose more than I wanted Trump to win, certainly. It was personal. Take it personally. Please. 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 I'm so sorry about the sun in my face. But yeah, it was personal. So I'm gonna write that article. I will write it far more in a far more articulate manner than I'm explaining it, but it'll be good. It'll be good, and hopefully get some traction. But just make sure that you guys sign up for emails and stuff on my website as well. This will be my last broadcast for the week, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately, Motor City Comic Con is this weekend, so I'll be having fun doing that. I'll be selling my books, so that'll be a good time. But there's so much to say, and I could talk with you guys about politics for the rest of the week for sure. And but I just, I had to tomorrow I'll be setting up in Novi and stuff and getting my stuff together. And then, I'll be it's a suburban show place on Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the Artist Alley selling my books. For those of you who don't know, I write a lot of fiction books. I have 2 nonfiction books, but most of my books are fiction. I write contemporary fantasy, paranormal romance, action adventure, historical fiction, fantasy, children's chapter books, picture books as well now. But my picture book isn't out yet. We're still working on it, but I'll have some concept art that'll be there that weekend. And we're just gonna have a good time selling stuff. And that's where I'll be. So wish me luck. And if you're interested in my stuff, you guys can check that out. And let me getting because I do not want to get distracted with too much personal stuff. You guys are here for the tea of the night. So let us get to getting. So last night, of course, historic. I was in Novi for the party. And I think the thinking from people was, well, Mike Rogers had internal polling that I had heard earlier, and his team was still saying that they had Trump ahead and he was close. So people suspected that Trump could kind of maybe pull them along and he would maybe get to that win. And unfortunately, the Democrats were able to eke out that Senate win, but Donald Trump did win. And it was pretty remarkable seeing the numbers come in because you guys were asking me yesterday, did I think he was going to win Michigan? And I said, I didn't know because we like electing crazy women. And Whitmer, she won re-election so handedly. And it was, hard to imagine a shift like that in Michigan, like even with the economy being the way that it was and stuff. Like in the midterms, they really mobilized kids on the college campuses. They changed so many of our rules that are in our constitution now. There was a big scandal with the Chinese kid who voted, who's not here. I mean, he's here legally, but he's not a citizen, and his vote still ended up counting the same as mine because they couldn't get rid of his vote. So there's all these concerns, people concerned about different shenanigans that could happen, 3 and ballot drops, blah 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 blah. People were concerned about all that stuff, and I just didn't know how it pan out, to be frank. And I told you guys I don't like to make predictions because I don't like to be wrong, but people were feeling good about Trump's overall win, but didn't want to really give their hopes up, like it was almost like too good to be true. And he ended up winning. And when I saw the numbers coming in, like different precinct slips where it had Trump winning in areas where it was like a big Muslim population, and even Jill Stein getting more votes than Kamala Harris. She didn't do well at Dearborn and East Lansing. I mean, uh like Hamtramck, other areas like that. Not East Lansing. I'm thinking about somewhere else. But she just didn't do well with the Muslims in the state because they don't like what's going on with Israel Gaza. They don't like the response. They want peace in the Middle East, not war. Her toting around Liz Cheney and toting around her endorsement from Dick Cheney makes people nervous. And she wouldn't meet with them. And Trump met with them. And there was also an incident where they kicked out some Muslims from her rally. And I don't think they were from my understanding, I don't think they were disruptive or anything, but they just asked them to go. And so that caused a big stir. And so Trump he went into the communities and met with the people, and they like having their finger on the pulse and being in that kind of proximity to someone in power. When Donald Trump was pitching himself in 2015, 2016, even though he wasn't like the perfect person for everybody, including, Christians and stuff, basically he wanted to come in and make a deal with people. And they're like, okay, well, if you meet the end of the bargain, that's good enough. Like, you don't have to be like our pastor or anything like that. But if you're going to secure our liberties and do certain things and deliver certain wins or whatever, yeah, sure, we will back you. Because at the end of the day, maybe you're not the most moral person in the world, but the other person's not too great either. And she actually wants to institute policies that are going to be damaging for us. So at the end of the day, Trump wanted to cut a deal, and he was willing to cut deals with a lot of different people. I don't know what all conversations people have behind closed doors, but peace is good enough for many people. People don't have the bloodlust or the thirst for for war like folks perhaps have had in the past. They don't want to do it. So Trump is the one saying, I don't want war. If there has to be a fight or whatever, we can go in quick and bomb some stuff and leave it at that and get out. But we're not going to be an embarrassment. We're not going to have 20-year wars and stuff. So he made that pitch, and it really it made a difference. He won Hispanics in Michigan. I mean, the numbers were crazy. And at one point at night, the lead just kept increasing when he was in Michigan, and everybody would yell, like, scream in excitement when they would see Michigan pop up on the screen when we were watching Fox News or whatever. And when I kept seeing that margin increase, I was really excited because I knew that Wayne County was going to be an issue, or Kent County and Ingham County, and those still had to come in, and those are big, heavy blue areas. But I've seen the election stuff, and it was like, okay, well, like John James, Debbie Stabenow, they're tied, or I was like, okay, it looks pretty good. But Wayne County hasn't dropped, and there goes like 6 points. You're done. Well, when they dropped everything else in there, Wayne County and other stuff. So I knew he had to have like at least like 6 points or whatever to be able to withhold the margin. And once he was like there comfortably, I'm like, they can't make this up. So they didn't call Michigan until I think it was today they called it. But last night when I saw those numbers, I'm like, I knew he was going to take that and going to win. Decision Desk knew the night before that Trump was going to win, or that it was likely that he was going to win. And I had posted the screenshot of their page on Facebook. And I was like, well, we'll see. And it totally happened for him. So the energy was pretty incredible. I mean, we were really optimistic, but once Pennsylvania was called, people were hugging and yelling and, so on. It was a incredible energy. A shout out to Tom Barrett. He was able to win in a congressional seat. I've known him for a while. Really good guy. So really glad that he was able to pull it out. He had a loss like last time he ran, so I'm really grateful. Sometimes you got to run more than once. And he ran more than once, and he was able to pull it out and get that win. He worked very hard. He's someone who really likes, retail politics and going and talking to voters and stuff. And he worked really hard. I know his staff worked really hard, and he's come on my show before. We haven't talked in a minute, but I'm sure I could probably get it back on. We talked briefly last night, so it was just a really great night. And so I had a TikTok video. It's maybe around about, I don't know if it got quite to 200,000, but I did a video with me and my sisters, and I'll just pull it up real quick if you guys haven't seen it. But the some of the angry comments from leftists is pretty funny on there on TikTok. So I've responded to a few people so far, but I don't know. It's mostly positive replies so far with this. But I had to do subtitles because it's really loud in there. So let me see.
Donald
Hold on.
Trump.
Trying to.
Donald Trump just officially announced.
Hold on. Sorry.
She works for the campaign. Donald Trump just officially announced, according to Fox News, just won the presidency. She's my sister. She works for the campaign. It's her fault.
Yeah, so I posted that. I didn't do any like we're gonna win, Trump's gonna win, and I didn't do anything braggadocious. And I didn't do anything like that for 2016. I just waited to the results because I don't like being wrong. I don't like egg on my face or whatever. And so after that, I was clowning for a little while. I was a little insufferable for not that long. And so that's probably the most braggadocious thing I'll probably put out. But I will say this, if you're watching and you happen to stumble upon this and you're on the left or you're in the middle or whatever, maybe you just don't like Trump or whatever. Let me just say this. If you are totally caught by surprise about this, you need to change up who you talk to. You need to change up what you consume as far as media. And polls can be wrong or whatever. So let me rephrase that. There's a lot of commentary, and you'll see some of it today, that are saying things like Kamala Harris ran a flawless campaign, and they'll blame racism, and they're blaming sexism and all kinds of different things, and they're ignoring the issues of the American people and belittling the economy and how it affects them and their what they believe, or immigration and other stuff like that. They're totally so lost. And they're just saying fascism and this and Trump's Nazi that. If that's what you've been listening to, and these folks can't even really figure out what has happened, if that's what you've been listening to, you need to consume other media for them to not know what the heck is going on, for them to not have a clue, for them to have pushed the Democrat propaganda lies over and over and over again, to whip up these people into just a frenzy, a hysteria. My sister was talking about somebody's post, this really negative woman, but we used to work with her at Target. And so she just had this long rant about all this stuff that Donald Trump was going to do. And, with abortion rights and Medicare, and my sister's like, is Trump getting rid of like Social Security and Medicare? I'm like, no, he doesn't want to touch any of that. I said, Social Security, they need to do something about it because it's going to go bankrupt. And people keep kicking the can down the line because it's not, politically great to talk about. It's the hard things. And Trump is also going to be kicking that can down the line. But he doesn't want to touch entitlements. He's not. He's going to add more stuff to entitlements or different programs, or folks, or at least try to, or at least was his campaign on. He's not talking about cutting all that stuff. I said, this propaganda. And she started saying other things. I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I'm like, that's not true. But they believe the craziest things. And Kamala Harris ran on this Project 2025 stuff. It's not Trump's agenda. They lie about the stuff that's in it. My sister was put a screenshot in our group chat about someone that said, stop using the period trackers. The government is going to use it to monitor your periods to see if you're pregnant or not. That's psychotic. That's psychotic. But Tim Walz and Kamala Harris has been saying that Donald Trump's going to have a pregnancy registry because of Project 2025. And that's not even in Project 2025. They push this nonsense. They make our citizens sick. So many people are mentally deranged. And it's because of what you're consuming. I'm not saying that obviously not everybody's right on the internet. And there's some crazy stuff out there. And there's some people who's wrong. And there's people who don't always fact check or whatever. I try to be accurate. I try to be right. And if I say something wrong, I'll go ahead and correct it. You know, some people just blatantly lie or deceive or whatever. So you got to be careful, and you got to do your own research, and you got to do your due diligence and all that stuff. But the regular mainstream media have been lying to so many people for so long. And unfortunately, so many people have been caught by surprise, and they don't understand, and they fear and they hate their fellow American. It's not just Trump. The kind of commentary that's being directed toward Hispanic voters right now is insane, because they're mad at them. You know how white people are like the devil to like the left or whatever, the straight white privileged male or whatever. And then there's like other minority groups that they're not as bad as the white people, but they do a little too well. So sometimes they kind of rope them in or group them in like Asians or something, right? It's so they'll just kind of lump them in and not sometimes, you know, to disguise like if it's test scores or something, they don't want everybody to know that the Asians are doing the best, so they'll rope them in with the white people and group them in. Like the people on the left will do stuff like this. So now it's the Hispanic people are too much like the white people. Nicole Hannah-Jones, you know, she was trying to you know, deminoritize Hispanic voters when DeSantis had a big win during the midterms and stuff. It was making those kind of pitches. So now they're mad at Hispanic voters, and now they're saying that they're racist and that's and misogynist, and that's really the issue with the vote. And it's stunning. It is so stunning, because so many times you hear people on the left talk about how racist and terrible Trump and Republicans or whatever are. But as soon as the minorities don't act the way that they want them to, they're the problem. And they just take their mask off, and the lizard people start hissing and out the racism. And it's pretty stunning. It's pretty remarkable. And there's just no shame. I asked the question, you know, when it looked like Trump was going to win, if the Democrats were going to learn any lessons, and it doesn't look like that is the case. These people are still unhinged. I'm not saying there's not like bright spots of clarity, like Chuck Todd like analyzed stuff a little bit and was, you know, talking about the voters and you know, the reality of like, hey, there's Hispanic voters. There's things that Republicans and them agree with, like school choice, which, by the way, black voters like that too. So that's going to be the real big push that Republicans do, and it should be, because it's a winning issue. You're going to be in trouble in a lot of places, not just with Hispanic voters. But let me show you. Let me show you this conversation, since we're on the topic. There's so many videos I want to show you guys, and I'm probably not going to have time to show them to you all. But the analysis from these people is pretty stunning. So it stuns me that these people bother with Al Sharpton at all. But this is Morning Joe with Mika, and they're talking about Hispanic voters, and according to them, they just have Hispanic voters have a problem with black leaders. So there you go.
I just say really quickly too, Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest, and they need to say, yes, there's misogyny, but it's not just misogyny from white men. Mm-hmm. It's misogyny from Hispanic men,
Right.
It's misogyny from black men, things we've all been talking about, who do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a black woman as president of the United States. You know, the Democratic Party, I've always found when you're sitting around talking, they love to just sort of balkanize everybody into these separate groups and say, oh, white people don't like women and black people.
So cringy.
No, it is time for the Democrats to say, okay, and you and I have talked about this before. A lot of Hispanic voters have problems with black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of
with other Hispanics. You got some that don't like each other. And some of the most misogynist things I've heard going on this Get Out the Vote tour came from black men. I mean, misogynist things. So you're absolutely right. It's not simplistic. And we've got to have real honest conversations about it.
Honest conversations.
Real honest conversations. It's, okay, the law, Hispanic men, they're sexist and they don't like black people. Oh, that's got to be the answer. That's the honesty, huh? That's the really nitty gritty thing that you got to analyze. There's a good comment here from Abel here. I'm going to go ahead and read if you don't mind. Trump won. Let me scroll up a little bit so I can read that. But Trump won because of the economy, and Democrats picked the most unelectable candidates they could find. RFK Jr. was the only one they had that could do anything, so they ran him off. It was very much the economy. There's another comment he had. It was the economy, unprotected borders. Democrats picked the worst, picked the most unelected, and then you went on with other comment. Yeah. So border was number one. And I mentioned my sister worked for the campaign. She was head of urban outreach and stuff. So she go all across the country talking to voters everywhere, but particularly men of color, especially black men. And number one thing was the economy. How are they going to put food on their table for their families? Number one issue. 2, borders. Because you get all these people coming in. It is changing the landscape of the nation. There are people taking jobs, and not just people, low-skilled jobs, picking cherries or whatever people think in their minds when they try to say, oh, well, we need someone to do this stuff. No, people do all kinds of things. There was a story she was telling me about someone who's like a contractor, and these folks come in and they'll undercut them because they'll work for less. There's stories about people getting money for food stamps from our government, and they'll put all their money, their food stamps together, and they'll go buy supplies, and they'll run like a food truck. And you're out here struggling because you don't get the same benefits that they're getting. So it's not just, I don't know, people thinking that illegals are picking oranges or something, that the Democrats bring up those scenarios like, who's going to pick your food? Or Kelly Osbourne once said, who's going to clean your toilets? Like, it's so bizarre that the stuff will just come out their mouths. There's more things to think about. And then there's resources that are being taken away from people. Like you think that people are going to forget that there were different schools that had to shut down to house people who came, or the different hotels are being filled up, or that people can't put food on their tables and they're struggling so much. Or it's hard for people to get aid during like hurricane disasters, but people are getting cards so they can go get food and stuff every month. People are just supposed to forget that and feel like, oh, that's just darn and dandy. People have an issue with that. Plus the safety issue of not knowing who's coming across the border, because people are coming from all around the world. I played for you guys a clip a couple times, but there was someone who paid the cartel money to smuggle them into the country. Like, I think it was like $10,000 or something. And but they came in with somebody else, some other people, and he was like, the US needs to vet people more, because these people who are coming with me, they're very scary. This person who is illegally entering a country is saying that the US needs to do a better job screening because he's afraid of who else is being smuggled in with him. Pretty remarkable. So we don't know what kind of people with terrorist affiliations. There's people caught, but we don't know who we didn't catch. There's people with criminal backgrounds. We know that there's tragic stories of people who've been killed. There was a story in Chicago of an African illegal alien who shot a man who was going into a synagogue and was shouting Allah Akbar. So that was something that just happened, which the media didn't really talk about too much. And how Chicago first covered it was like they were trying to make it a BLM situation or something. It was really bizarre with their headlines. People just didn't forget about that stuff. So that's issue number 2, the border. And might I add, there's people who've come in here legally, and their families come in legally, or they have friends and family that are waiting to come in here legally, and it takes a while to come in here. And they don't appreciate when people skip the line. There's something very grade school about it. Like standing in line and here comes a kid just trying to skip the line, or if you're in the grocery store, checkout line, or someone comes and they want to skip the line, it makes people upset. There's like a visceral reaction to it. They had to wait in line. They waited their turn. They did the right thing. You coming in, or they're seeing like herds of all these, middle-aged or young men coming in claiming to be asylum seekers, and they're clearly not. And I can appreciate people wanting to come into the U.S. for economic opportunities. It's a great country, but you got to wait your turn, and you shouldn't skip the line. And we don't know enough about you. And you could be a criminal, and you could have nefarious reasons for coming over here. And then the cartel running the border and having, drones flying our border, checking to see what kind of cars are there, and smuggling in fentanyl and lacing with other stuff. It's just a mess. But the border was number 2 for men. Okay. The border was number 2. Another thing that was very effective for the Trump campaign was the issue of the transgenderism, school sports, women's bathroom and stuff, because they have daughters and they have wives and girlfriends, and they don't want them to go to the bathroom and there be a dude with a dick in the bathroom in a dress. Loudoun County in Virginia, oh my gosh. I heard about how good Trump did there, and I thought he might take the state. But in Loudoun County, that's where they had that boy who sexually assaulted a girl. And they said a boy in a skirt. And then the school board, the superintendent tried to say that there wasn't any kind of incidents. And then they just lied about it, tried to cover it up. And the father was at a meeting, and he went AWOL, and he ended up getting arrested. And at first, before people knew the backstory of why he was acting out, they took pictures, snapped it, put it on the cover of stuff, and people were circulating this picture of this guy who's wrestled by the police and had his belly hanging out his shirt and stuff. That was a father whose daughter was sexually assaulted. And then the Biden administration, the Biden White House, coordinated with the National School Board Association, and it wasn't the whole school board. It was just a couple people on the National School Board, because other ones found out about it and they didn't agree what they did. So I just want to put that out there. But they did coordinate with the National School Board Association to make a letter, and it had different instances, like evidence in the letter, and they included the headline in that story about that father in their reasons why they wanted Merrick Garland to consider using the Patriot Act against parents. People don't like that. People don't like that nonsense. An ad that was very effective for Trump was that one when we were talking about Kamala Harris wanting to pay for transgender surgeries of inmates. It was very effective, so much so that Kamala Harris had to kind of back away from her pro-LGBT stuff a little bit. But it was too late. He played it during football. Whoever had the idea to cut that commercial and pay for the ads to have it air during football, wonderful. Wonderful. Amazing idea. Congrats. Congrats. It was brilliant. It was one of the most effective ads, and I know they hate it. They hate how effective it was because they love propping up the LGBT community. I think mostly because they can use them as a cudgel. Ideology is associated a lot, but they can use them to try to restrict liberties, like First Amendment liberties and religious liberties of people. They use that group. They use that group. They can also make a lot of money off of like transgender surgeries making people slaves to big pharma and all. There's lots of reasons associated with it, but it probably kills them. But that was such an effective attack against them. So yeah, Trump won. Yeah, Trump won. And if you want to talk about being honest and analyzing the details, that's what you need to think about instead of saying Hispanic men, or Hispanics, they don't like black people that much. They got a problem with black candidates. Oh, Hispanic people, they even got a problem with their own selves. Yeah, there can be some inner fightings between different minority groups, but get real. Get real. If you want to talk about misogyny, black men, that's great. First of all, I'm not saying that there's not misogynistic people out there, but black people have had black female leaders for a while in their communities. If Kamala Harris was great, she would have won. I mean, there's obviously the issue with the economy and how the state of things are, and the fact that people did relate her to being the incumbent, and they wanted a change. Okay, so there was already a lot of things working against her, granted, but she wasn't a good candidate. She wasn't a good candidate at all. She couldn't articulate what things she would change. She wouldn't articulate what things that she regrets. She didn't take any accountability for her actions. Even they played a video saying, hey, Tim Walz is going around calling people Nazis and stuff because that rally. Is that the kind of rhetoric you guys like? And then she's like, Donald Trump has to stop being divisive. I'm like, lady, the question was about Tim Walz and his rhetoric. And you're still saying, Trump does all this finger pointing. You're pointing your finger right now. You're pointing your finger and then there's fingers pointing back at you, ma'am. It's called projection. It's called projection. So yeah, you lost. And if you are listening to anyone who's giving you these bullcrap commentaries about how awful men are, about how awful black men are, how awful Hispanic men are, and women, and so on, you need to tune them out. They're not being honest with you. They're not being honest with you. The Democrats made a lot of blunders. So let me just run through them. Okay? Let me just run through them. President Joe Biden said, first of all, Donald Trump, let me back up a little bit more. Donald Trump was a pretty darn good president. The economy was good. There was the chaos of like the Russia collusion stuff and the constant investigations and stuff and the impeachments, but those are things that, they were doing to bring him down. But other than that, people were having a good time. The economy was so good, people were hoping for a crash. Bill Maher said as much. He wanted it to crash. He got some pushback for that. But I remember they were like hoping for a recession. Like there's gonna be one. There's gonna be one soon. There's gotta be a recession soon. And then COVID happened. And as soon as Donald Trump said 15 days to slow the spread, he basically surrendered the presidency, because then they shut down the country, and you had Democrats saying, oh, we're going to use this to implement our agendas. Like Whitmer and Newsom and other folks said different stuff, along those lines. And then they changed all these rules so they could fortify the election. And there's people who suspect that there was, fake ballots or whatever, but let's say that it's not. Let's just go with the fact that they were able to capture so many voters who usually check out, and they pressured people. Get your ballot, turn it, get your ballot, turn it, get your ballot. And they run commercials like, people can see if you voted or not. People can see if you voted or not. You better, it just kind of scary and a bit threatening how they would do the commercials and so on. But there was so much pressure, and they made it so accessible to vote for people who, were low information, maybe low propensity voters who wouldn't normally bother to stand in line. And they did the ballot harvesting and all this stuff. And now looking at the numbers of how poorly Kamala did compared to Joe Biden in 2020. So it's funny because some people are like, oh my gosh, maybe we did really steal the election. because there's still a lot of votes that need to be counted, to be fair. So we'll eventually see how close she was to Joe Biden's numbers. But right now, last I looked, there was like a 15 million vote difference. So people are like, that's very interesting, those numbers. But COVID, it was different. Like, but I do wonder how many more votes Trump could have gotten if he didn't suppress or depress the mail-in vote, because the GOP historically has a pretty good absentee ballot program. And when Trump was like, don't trust the mail and stuff, different people within state parties and so on, and data people were telling me that Trump basically depressed and killed a bit of that initiative. So if he hadn't have done that and was pressuring people to get their ballots and turn it in, similar to the way that the Democrats were doing, and still encouraged high turnout on election day, I wonder if we still would have, if we would have had a different result, back in 2020. I don't know, because he's not that far off from where he was. Kamala is way off from where Joe Biden is. Again, they're still counting ballots, but it's too bad. The mistakes were made, but 15 days to slow the spread. They changed a lot of rules. They did the ballot harvesting and all kinds of different stuff to get the result that they wanted. So, but Joe Biden, he was supposed to be like the moderate or whatever transformative kind of figure, and he ended up winning the election, was sworn as president, so on. He told these people, he gave everybody the impression that he was going to do it for one term. One term. He was not honest. He was not honest. So that was their first big mistake. Joe Biden running for re-election. And everyone should have known that it was a bad idea. But yet everyone went along with it. Everyone went along with it. So that was the next big problem. Now, not everybody quite went along with it, because you had the independent challenge from Kennedy, and he wanted to do a primary. They wouldn't let him do a primary, so he just decided to run as an independent. And there were other Democrats who wanted to run against Biden, but the DNC was like, we're not entertaining someone running against our incumbent president. That's crazy. Now, it's not a good sign when people want to run against the incumbent anyway, but kind of says stuff about the state of the country and so on, that if you can lead a pretty good challenge to the incumbent president. But there's different factors in play, including the fact that he's a very, very old man who was in a decline even while he was running for that position in the first place. So they should have just said, Joe, we are going to have a serious primary challenge. If you do not step aside, we're not going to let you just run again when you don't seem to be there like you were before. And there's no shame in getting older, but we think that at this point, for the party and the sake of the country and maintaining our control, we think it is best if we pass the torch and allow people to have a primary. So if you want to run, we will just allow the primary against you, and see what if maybe he would have gotten on the debate stage with all these other folks. Or maybe he just would have stepped aside if they were going to stand on business like that. But they decided to go along with it. Another big mistake. So they run Biden. Biden cannot go the distance. He can't go the distance, and things aren't good anyway, because of Afghanistan was really the big kind of decline in his poll numbers and stuff. It was like the mask was off with Biden. There's a true question about his competency. He wasn't the kind, Biden that people thought that he was. There was just all kinds of issues with him, and then the economy, and just not great for Biden. It's not setting up to be a good possible re-election for him. But things really went south when they had the debate, obviously. And there was all this concern and questions about his health and his decline, and the White House and said he was fine, and is there cheap fakes and it's misinformation, disinformation. And then the media pushed that. The media continued to push that over and over and over again. It was our eyes that are lying to us, while in private, because a video that went really viral was Joe Biden being let off by Barack Obama at a fundraiser that George Clooney hosted. And so there was one video where they're like cutting in and out, and the editing, bravo, who edited that video. But when people saw like the long, like extended shot, and like him slowly being kind of led by Obama, that it looked really bad to a lot of people. But they're like, that's cheap fakes and blah, 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 blah. But in reality, those guests who were interacting with Biden and saw him had so many concerns, and they were like, okay, but what are we going to do? Because there's going to be a debate very soon. And they're like, well, okay, either he'll do great and we'll say, oh, that was a bad night, or everyone is going to see what we're seeing. So of course, Biden, it's funny because I think a lot of his downfall is really how he looked and his mannerisms and that split screen and him just being like, for so much of the debate. And there are moments when he totally bombed, like when they were talking about abortion and all of a sudden he switched the border and talked about migrants raping women and how like, why would you go back to that? And then he said something about people needing abortions in case they're raped by their sisters or something like that. There were moments where he totally blundered for sure, but there was other times when he, was fine, I guess. And if you read his commentary more than watched him, it probably would have been better for him. But everybody saw the debate and it wasn't good. And then they started having leaks, and then the media started asking constantly about, what do you say about people who say you can't do the job and you can't be in the race? And they kept pushing on him and pushing on him and pushing on him. But he kept saying, I'm staying in this race. I'm going to do the thing. And his family was encouraging him. Jill was encouraging him. Hunter was encouraging him, and so on. And those were the people that he looked toward. And something happened. Allegedly, it was Obama that pushed or whatever. And the rumor was that they told him that Kamala Harris was on board for the invoking the 25th Amendment. And he probably just stepped aside to, keep his dignity a bit so he could be president until the end of the year. And then, I guess technically going into the next year, but very early in January is when they switch it off. And then they quickly switched to Kamala Harris. So Joe Biden, he should have never ran again. They shouldn't have let him run again, and they shouldn't have let it go on for so long. And then by the time the debate happened and they switched him out, which was incredibly immoral in my opinion, to wait that late, because obviously they wanted to switch him out because they didn't want him to lose, because he's still doing the job of president. So if he's cognitively impaired and he can't do the job to run for president, he certainly shouldn't be the president, but they let him continue to be the president. So making the pitch that he can't do the job isn't there. And he kept saying, well, I want to unify my party. The truth is they thought that he was going to lose. They thought he was going to drag down the ticket. So they pushed him out. So they didn't do this to protect democracy. They did it because they were afraid of democracy. We're not a democracy, but they were afraid that the people would vote for Trump over him. So they replaced him. That's what happened. They're not noble. That's what happened. So Kamala Harris is switched out. Big problem. Huge problem for the Democrats, making it be her. But the problem of her being the candidate, there's kind of no choice for them. They had a choice, but their ideology painted them into this corner. And we had many conversations about this before it happened. But I said they couldn't really pass over Kamala Harris because she is a woman of color. And if they pass over a woman of color for Josh Shapiro or Gretchen Whitmer, that will betray their values of what they hold so dear, of the oppression Olympics and so on and so forth. It'll look so bad to them, to their own base, if they do that, if they pass over Kamala Harris. Doesn't matter that she's clearly not the best person for the job. Joe Biden should have never, maybe the first mistake was really like him picking her to be the vice president, because she didn't last too long in the race. She said the most radical things. She tried to implement the most radical things. Her actual record in the Senate is very left wing, and things she supported were very left wing in California. And those records, they don't go away. And some of those things that she said and pledged obviously caught up with her. Her record on or her intentions with fracking obviously caught up with her in Pennsylvania. Her record with the transgender stuff, surgeries for inmates and stuff, that obviously really caught up to her, especially in the end. And it really, did damage with her in the eyes of the male voter. So she had all of this baggage. I knew they wanted a woman of color. There were other women of color that they were considering, black women that they were considering, and I thought they should have went with that because I said I didn't want them to win, but I'm like, it makes more sense to pick someone else because Kamala has too much baggage. My biggest problem with Donald Trump and his debate with Kamala Harris is the fact that he allowed her to get away with so much stuff without bringing up so much of her baggage. But it caught up with her in the end, certainly. They shouldn't have picked her for vice president in the first place. But they did, and they couldn't pass over her. Their ideology would never let them do it. They should have had a floor fight or whatever, a little, because where else were they going to really do a kind of primary, I guess? So they should have just, made a couple pitches or whatever. And it happens at conventions all the time. I'm like, this is a pretty big deal with the presidential stuff. But, you have your big conventions or whatever, and you have your votes, and maybe someone has to step out and can't do the role. And I filled in a position to be there's a like a really big convention with like Republicans and stuff where you pick your different state party leaders, and but then there's like state committees that you have with the state committee or whatever. And I ended up taking a party position, and I won an election, but it wasn't with all the delegates. It was with basically the state committee, and I had to win over the state committee because someone, I think they were leaving the state or whatever. So I, put myself out there, and I ended up winning. And if I had to do the whole convention thing, I don't think I probably would have did it. But I don't really like the retail politics, room to room. Like I can sing in front of like thousands of people, but like the room to room stuff, it makes my heart race and stuff. So I was very glad that I had a friend, Kathy Burden, who it walked me around the room, was introducing me to people and so on. That made it a lot easier, certainly, to campaign. But all those delegates, the Democrat Party wasn't going to have a say, but those delegates there could have had a say, and they could have had Josh Shapiro and Kamala Harris and other people make their pitch, and they could have picked somebody. And if it was Whitmer, though I don't like Whitmer, or if it was Shapiro, I'm sure Newsom really wanted to be president, but he was too radical, and too many people know about the radical policies of California. So I don't think that would have been a good move for them, but they blew it. They just took Kamala Harris and they went with it, and it was what it was. So that was another huge mistake that they made. Then Kamala Harris did not do any interviews for 40 days. 40 days, didn't have any hard questions or whatever for 40 days. Now, maybe you can say, well, Christina, that's not a mistake because she was really bad at talking. She's really bad at talking. So if she's really bad at talking, then it's best that she dodges and doesn't do interviews. Okay, you got to sink or swim. And if she's just going to sink, she's got to sink. But people needed to see her, and people needed her to work out her answers to what was she going to do differently. They needed to know her and just let the people make a decision. But she wasn't going to get any better if she didn't do the interviews and if she didn't have those conversations. Instead, she just hit herself for so long. So people will normally choose the devil that they know rather than some kind of unknown. Now, of course, she was the vice president, but it's different you being the vice president versus you wanting to be the president, and you could actually implement different things. So people didn't trust her, though they may not like Trump. They could say, well, I at least still know this guy and there's more money in my pocket. This person seems like they can't do the job. They're not even competent or brave enough to really do interviews and stuff. And then when she finally decided to start doing stuff, I'm sure they made a change because of polling. Because if they thought it was all working out for their good, then they probably wouldn't have bothered with any interviews, to be frank. And so she went on Call Her Daddy. And I don't think they were there for a whole hour or whatever. And I don't think she necessarily bombed that or whatever, but she said stuff that I certainly didn't like in that. While Trump was doing, viral video after viral video and viral interview, thanks to Barron, his son, who watched a lot of these guys on YouTube, and Trump started going on these different podcasts. And he really scored when, Joe Rogan asked him to come on. But his Theo Von interview was really good. And people got to see him be humanized. because all these people talk about how he's a cognitively impaired, he's on a decline, he's a wild, crazy man. But Trump doesn't change. Like Ben Shapiro said, I've seen him talk to donors, I've seen him talk to, families of hostages of October 7th. I've seen him talk to all these people, and he's the same in any situation. He is, you cannot like Trump, but he's very authentic. It's like the complete opposite with Kamala Harris, who is not authentic at all. Will say anything, do anything to get elected, and she's just vapid and frankly kind of stupid. So or at least comes off that way. So he would go on these podcasts. JD Vance, that was a big win for Trump, picking JD Vance. He got some pushback from it, but JD Vance can communicate so well. And so they were trying to paint them as weird. And by the time he went on Theo Vaughn and then Joe Rogan, people said this guy was weird. Like, he's not weird. He's not weird at all. He's very normal, seems very chill. His life seems very relatable, actually, to a lot of people. So why are they calling him weird? And making stupid talking points like, oh, he went to a fancy college. What, he had dreams and aspirations and made something out of himself? Do you not respect people picking themselves up by their bootstraps? Like, what was that? What was that? Especially since all these elitists are the Democrats. Oh my gosh, they're reaming so much about like, well, we got the educated vote. It's not because you're smart, it's because you're indoctrinated. You can have a degree, but that doesn't mean you're wise. It doesn't mean you're wise. And now you're downing people who weren't college educated because you didn't get the result that you want in an election. And now you all sound like clowns. And you're still not able to process why you lost. Because you're too much in your own freaking head. So on top of her not doing podcasts or whatever, there's someone who literally said there's a college kid who they interviewed, I think it was MSNBC. And he said that since Kamala Harris didn't do the Joe Rogan interview, he decided to go ahead and vote for Trump. He's like, I wanted to hear what she had to say. And she really could have used that. And I don't think she would have done well. I don't think she would have handled Joe's questions well, even though Joe isn't like, I'm going to interrogate you. He wanted to have a conversation with her. He wouldn't have a conversation with her. And she probably couldn't do it for more than an hour and it not be a disaster. I don't know. But Joe was very, like, people were saying, Joe, she can't do it. She can't do it. He's like, no, interviews, that's a different skill set, or speeches, that's a different skill set. And some people just aren't good at it. And he's like, I just want to have a conversation with her. I just want to have a conversation with her. And maybe she would have been able to have a normal conversation. She must have normal conversations with other people, right? So maybe she could have pulled it off, but the fact she didn't try, and not only did she not try, they were like, oh, well, he has to come here and we can only do it for an hour. And he's like, why wouldn't you run to go do that? You can go run and do SNL, but you can't go talk to Joe Rogan. Trump had other things to do. He made everybody wait 4 hours for his rally, and they waited. Kamala could have did the same. He was willing to work on her schedule. That was so important, and she blew it. Again, maybe it would have been a disaster. Probably would have been a disaster. But to try, at least, would have been the thing. To try. And then when he asks questions, take some accountability and say, well, we did some things and there was, just go ahead and just talk about the mistakes we made or where we learned from this. There's a delicate way to say that we screwed up. You can say, well, this thing happened and there were more opportunities where we could have done more. But we've learned from this. And so going forward, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. There's a delicate way to say we screwed the pooch on that. But she just was so no accountability. And if you've ever worked in a job or if you've ever had to manage people, been around difficult coworkers or whatever, the thing that just makes somebody so terrible at their job and unbearable is when they don't take any accountability. So she was just the worst on so many different fronts. But she made a mistake before not going on Joe Rogan, guys. Picking Tim Walz. I don't know how much they vetted this guy, but of course he had the stolen valor situation. His lies about different historical events that happened overseas. His connection with China. He just... there's just a lot of issues with this guy. How radical he was in Minnesota, which I think she only carried that state by 3, so which was pretty remarkable, you know. He added nothing, because he was going to win that. She was going to maybe win that state anyway. So what did he add? If she had picked Josh Shapiro, maybe Trump would have still won Pennsylvania. Maybe, probably, I don't know. Look, it just seemed like to be just kind of his night. But that, oh gosh, you don't understand how happy Trump campaign was when she picked Tim Walz. When she didn't pick Shapiro, people were elated. So they were celebrating. Trump dodged, well, he did dodge a bullet in Pennsylvania, but you know, that was another one, like a metaphorical one. It was such a mistake picking Walz. And there was all this talk about why she didn't pick him, because there were too many anti-Semites in the Democrat Party. And that's not something Republicans were saying. I mean, Republicans did say that, but the Democrats were saying that first. They were in the media was doing that. They were analyzing the Democrat base and like, oh, well, she picks this, there's going to be people having an issue because of what's going on in Israel. I'm like, that's concerning, really concerning. But at the end of the day, they claim that the reason why she picked Walz over Shapiro was basically this is like Walz's last big chance for something, and he's going to really be a cheerleader versus, you know, Shapiro might outshine her and he has higher aspirations. And people say like, oh, he's like the next Obama and stuff. And she's just not going to be able to, you know, be kind of the star. And she needed someone that was going to do a supporting role. So, you know, I didn't know if she asked him if he would say yes. That was what I was saying at first. Because I'm like, why would you want to hitch your star to Kamala Harris when you are going to have so many other opportunities to do well for yourself? So I don't know if he'd want to do it. That's what I was thinking. Like people would mention Whitmer. I'm like, if I was Gretchen Whitmer, I wouldn't want to be her VP candidate. Like, and you know, I wouldn't, for such a weak figure. Maybe they would have took the job. I'm not saying they wouldn't have maybe did it, but I would have definitely paused on that, and I probably wouldn't have did it because it was going to be a tough election. So another huge mistake with Walz. Going so negative, being so vague, going so negative with Trump. You know, at first they're just running joy, 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 and then they went full on hysteria. They're having a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. Oh, Trump is a fascist. I doubt these people know what fascism is and could explain it after using that word. I would have been like, what does the word mean? Kamala Harris, can you explain? But I've never seen anybody do fall out with her like that. So, but they pushed and they pushed and they pushed. But normal people in their minds, they're saying, this man was already president for 4 years. If he was going to do some Hitler stuff, wouldn't he have done it before? Wouldn't he have done that before? It kind of seems like they're just saying stuff. and to think they focus so much time and energy on Project 2025 on something that wasn't even associated with them, and it didn't pan out. Obviously, they made a mistake focusing so much on abortion, thinking that, you know, they're saying row your vote. They did not have the outcomes that they wanted because people cared more about feeding their kids than killing them. Again, they cared more about feeding their kids than killing them. It's pretty bleak when your big pitch is, hey, we'll let you kill your kid. That it's pretty bleak. People want a future for their family. And you're out here stomping for no restrictions on abortion. Most people find that abhorrent. Even people who want to allow it, they don't like the idea of people just using it as backup birth control. They don't like that, especially when it's really late in the pregnancy. That's wild to people. It's so wild to people. Democrats have to lie about what actually occurs and why women have them late. Because there are women who have late term pregnancies that have nothing to do with the some kind of tragic fetal abnormality or the life of the mother. People have them late for the same reason they'll have them early. Maybe it's economic reasons or just kind of some kind of lifestyle shift. Maybe you got a new job or new opportunity, or your boyfriend broke up with you or whatever. Or maybe you just waited too late because you were mulling it over. Someone told me like a week or two ago that the doctor recommended, and they were around like 20 some weeks, and they're like, it's not too late to have an abortion if that's what you want. She didn't want no abortion, but he just said that because she already had 4 kids. Wild. So they can't be honest about stuff. So her messaging was bad. Her ideas were ridiculous. Talking about the price gouging, like, well, some people said that they had price gouging, or grocery stores, they have 2% margin. And what you're going to do if you start doing price controls with the food, if you have some kind of local grocery store, let's say it's a local mom and pop grocery store, and you're controlling what people can sell, the eggs and the milk or whatever, and not going by the market, what's appropriate. What you're really going to do is you're going to destroy those stores, and you're going to just make it so that there's going to be always going to just be these big box stores that can make up margin in maybe other areas of the stores. And, you know, those mom and pop shops, those small businesses, those family little small businesses, maybe you had a little dream of owning a grocery store, you're going to destroy those, and you're going to make Walmart more money and give them more space because they have plenty of shelves to make up the margin somewhere. Maybe they'll raise your pepper prices and your bacon and stuff a little bit, but they can make it up elsewhere while your local grocery store can't do business, for the price that they are allowed to sell bread for, they're not making money from it. So people realize a lot of the things that she was suggesting economically was stupid. And then there was her pitches, her really late pitches to Black men, which were offensive. Hey, you want to sell weed? We'll make sure it's legal. That's my pitch for Black men. Terrible. And then her pitch to Hispanic voters were more about economic stuff, you know, and didn't focus on like stuff like that was race. But the loan forgiveness, that's not even, none of the policies were specific to any group anyway, because you can't just forgive people's loans based on race. That's not legal. So even with her pitches to different minority groups, it was still dishonest, and she was still lying to people. By the way, I think a lot of the stuff she was saying about different homes and giving loans and money for different programs, I think some of those were already available. I've because I heard something that someone who worked in the government had said something along those lines, and so I got to do a little more digging on that. But I guess it doesn't really matter too much now. But it was just funny when I heard that. I'm like, there's just lies on top of lies on top of lies, just so many deceptions. So she just ran a trash campaign. And you have Sunny from The View saying she ran a flawless campaign. Joy Reid said she ran a flawless campaign. If any of these people say that and you're listening to them, you need to stop. You need to turn off the TV. You cannot listen to these people. They're giving you such a skewed perception on life. If you think that she had a flawless campaign, when she was asked, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? And nothing comes to mind, and people want change, and you're saying nothing comes to mind. And that was an issue, like at least 2-3 different interviews. She didn't have a good answer. I don't think she ever really had a good answer for that. So I'm like, well, I'm not literally Joe Biden because I'm a woman, right? I can't define that, but I'm a woman, right? I'm not Joe Biden, and I've got brown skin. So I'm clearly not Joe Biden, and I'm younger than Joe Biden. So I'm clearly not Joe Biden. And I was raised in a middle-class family, and we liked our lawn. She's like, when you chat GPT is better than like AI or whatever, but sometimes before AI started to get really kind of big online with chat GPT and stuff, when people would say, I had this computer watch all these Batman episodes or something, and I told them to write a script, and the script is just kind of wild. That's what it was like Kamala Harris's campaign is an AI generated, but that was before the AI got really smart. It was like the early stages of just weirdness, and that's what she was, and that's what she just kept popping out. And she couldn't think on her feet, and she couldn't speak well, and she took no courage where in moments when it mattered. Like she didn't take any courage in true positions when it came to the Israel and Gaza, and there's a lot of finger wagging and whataboutism and both sidism and stuff, and it didn't satisfy the Jewish population, it didn't satisfy the Muslim population, and she failed, with both. Of course, Trump didn't like run away with the Jewish vote, but he did better than Republicans have done obviously in a long time. And of course, the Muslim vote made a huge difference in Michigan, where they have a big population in certain sects. So she failed stunningly there. So on top of that, people did not feel like this woman would be good on foreign policy and that she's gonna be strong enough. And I kept saying, like, watching her, I'm like, she just doesn't have it. She doesn't have it. She doesn't have that the quality of leadership. She doesn't make you feel like she can do the job. She not at all. And the fact that she didn't come out to give her concession speech last night and they were radio silent, and she had, her campaign dude come out and say something, sending out, I'm speaking while you're in a rally or something like that, or when you're on a debate stage or whatever, to have the girl boss moment. But when things are really down, you can't stand up and do the right thing and have courage. It just shows how weak you are. It shows how weak you are. Ugh. Let me, I got a super chat. Let me go ahead and, how do you feel when a detractor brings up Trump's distant past, like the rent discrimination lawsuit? The rent discrimination lawsuit, I mean, there's other people who have, dug into it more than I have, but I mean, he didn't admit any sort of guilt to it, but from my understanding, there kind of wasn't any there with the lawsuit when you really kind of go into the details. And gosh, there's just one TikTok that really went into it. But that's, I guess that's the thing that's kind of the murkiest, that I kind of don't know how to explain all the way off the top of my head, but just from my understanding, there wasn't really anything at fault there. There was like certain people that he, they didn't have kind of preference that they wanted to live there, but that didn't have anything to do with race. And so Donald Trump, he wanted people going to his club and stuff while other folks were like discriminating against different groups. And it's just not in his history to really be racist like that. And he would get all these praise from, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and other folks in the past, and he dated Black women and so on. So this history that people are trying to bring up with him being a racist, one, you have to reach so far back to even get any kind of evidence, and that's pretty remarkable. But it's really not as it appears, and I wish I'll make a video about it. Thank you for the super chat. I'll make a video about it. I'll get more details. I'll make a video about it. At one point, I was hoping that we kind of be over the needing to make debunking videos about Trump and stuff. And and then I ended up having to make that hour-long video debunking the top 10 Trump myths. And that's one that I didn't cover, but I covered very fine people. I guess all the ones were basically in relation to him running for office and stuff, but I covered the very fine people hoax, gassing protesters thing, the Russia collusion, inciting a riot. I mean, I was not inciting a riot, inciting an insurrection and stuff. So I covered so many things. If you didn't watch that video, you guys can still go watch it. It's on YouTube. And yeah, I'll just add it to the list. I was glad that I did a video on the Central Park 5, and maybe I'll make one that's kind of more high quality, but I did one on TikTok where I just read Trump's article to people that he put out in 4 different newspapers about the Central Park fight, but he didn't mention them by name. It was like 2 weeks after that particular attack, but it was really like in general how people needed to have faith in the law and that law enforcement was going to be able to protect them, and that criminals needed to know there'd be retribution if they prey on people. And it wasn't right that people of all different races and ages and stuff were prisoners and held captive by criminals who won't be held accountable. So that was really the gist of his argument. And people definitely thought they were guilty at the time, and they did confess. And we can go into more details about, that later. But it got over 70,000 views on TikTok, and people were sharing it around. And, so I was glad for that. And so many people are like, that's the article that's made such, a big fuss. They're making such a big fuss about it. And people are like, I don't see anything wrong with what Trump said. Like, I agree with him and so on. So I guess it is still important to debunk this stuff, because again, Trump is going to be president, again, and people are still hysterical and people are afraid. I had a friend of mine, I post a status, like, if you're really concerned about all this hysteria, you need to like look at different media, because you're being fed all these lies. And so he's like, well, people are really scared and have like concerns. He's like, I hope he's a president for all people. And I said, he was literally already president for 4 years. He's like, well, that doesn't mean his presidency is going to be the same. Yeah, but we have some history there. Like, presidents are different. They make some different decisions when they're lame ducks, sure, because they're not going to be held to a standard from the citizens to be reelected or whatever. But that doesn't mean they go full on, hey, I wasn't Hitler in my first term, but let me go ahead and be Hitler in the second one. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So I don't appreciate people's hysteria. So I'll keep chipping away at that. But I thank you, Starbound. Yeah, so just make sure you're subscribed. I will commit to going into more detail about that particular case. But yeah, I can debunk a lot of Trump stuff, but I have to give you a more succinct answer than that. Let's look at some more outrage from the night. And this one's good. This one's really good.
I come to elections with a sense of humility, simply because polls don't vote, people vote. And so in elections, we finally get to hear what the American people have to say. And I've come to this election with an open mind, and I want to know what the American people have to say. What was it, 6 hours ago, I was mystified by what was going on. And now I can't help but think that if this election if it proves out that the millions of people who are watching Fox News, if that ends up being the case, then I can't help but wonder if the American people have given up on democracy simply because of what he's told us, what he wants to do.
So millions of people who voted in an election, a free and fair election, millions of people voted. And by the way, the people who voted for Trump voted for the same candidate they supported in the primary. The Republicans at least got to vote for the person that they actually voted for in the primary. That wasn't the case with Kamala Harris. And the people who decided on him don't care about democracy. Again, we're not a democracy, okay? But, I understand what people are saying when they say that, so we'll just go along with it. We voted. The Democrats switched out Biden because they were scared of democracy. They were scared of the will of the people. And they were doing what they could to retain power and hoping they could salvage different Senate seats and so on, because they were concerned about the down ballot. I don't even know if they really thought that Kamala Harris could actually win, but they just were like, okay, maybe we can do something about these down ballots. And it wasn't the case. I think Joe Biden would have done better if he remained on the ballot. I think, because you could say, oh no, he wasn't well and they were freaking out. Okay, but if Joe Biden made it clear that he wasn't going to leave, that he was going to continue campaigning, if he made that clear, And he was like, fine, go ahead. Invoke the 25th. Try it. Because that wouldn't have been good on them either. If he had stayed, I still think Trump would have obviously pulled out a win because it was a change election. And he's obviously incumbent. But I think he would have done better to get closer to his performance in 2020 than Kamala Harris did. I absolutely believe that. So, but they were concerned, so they swapped him out because they didn't want the people to have their say in the way that they thought it was going to go. So they switched up things last moment, traded Biden out for a candidate that didn't get any primary votes, and they expected you to just shut up, swallow it, and take it and vote their way. This man is ridiculous, and he shouldn't be on air. Not because I'm pro-censorship, but this is ridiculous commentary. This is ridiculous commentary, and it doesn't help inform the American people. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and he's giving his opinion now. But people, they turn on these programs, and they want to be maybe entertained to some degree, but they want to be informed. And this is hysteria. Hysteria. Just pure hysteria.
Simply because of what the Supreme Court decided in terms of immunity. I mean, he has said he wants to go after his political enemies.
I don't even know what he's talking about.
I am your retribution.
He has said that. Okay, so Trump saying I am your retribution, that's because people have been gunning for the American people, gunning for him, and his victory is retribution. His victory is retribution. And people have felt that way for a long time. In 2016, there was a woman who supported Donald Trump. He brought her after the Hollywood Access tape. This was pretty brilliant or whatever. He had a press conference with 3 different women. 2 of those women were Bill Clinton's accusers. The other woman was a woman who was raped as a little girl, and Hillary Clinton represented her rapist. And she was so brutally raped that she couldn't conceive later in life. And the only justice, the only retribution this woman had was the Donald Trump victory, was for Hillary Clinton to be stopped. That was her retribution. Not her, going to jail, not her being harmed physically, Trump winning. The retribution is victory. Retribution is victory. It's not him going after his political opponents, which the DOJ literally is investigating. I guess not so much now. Was investigating their political rival, their political opponent. Why do you think people were so harsh on the January 6th people? Some people for just like trespassing and walking around and stuff. To the fullest extent of the law, people suffered. I'm not saying that people shouldn't, get charged for doing bad things if they were attacking folks and being violent or whatever, but a lot of those people got a raw deal. At the same time, not too long ago, the BLM riders were burning down cities and stuff, and they didn't get that kind of justice to them. So kind of looks like political prosecution. The Biden-Harris administration, they've gone after pro-lifers for violating the FACE Act. I can't wait till Donald Trump pardons some people as soon as he gets in. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. But as soon as Donald Trump was president, because people were in the rallies just saying, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. And then as soon as that was over, I was in a rally in Michigan where he's like, that was fine when we were running, but that's not anymore. He nixed that, okay? He nixed that immediately. And he's like, I don't want to hurt Hillary. I don't want to hurt her. He let that go for the good of the country. So they're speculating all these crazy things he's going to do, even though we know he didn't do those things before. Now, maybe he would be, vindicated or not vindicated. Maybe he could be like, okay, I clearly made a mistake. I showed them mercy in a way that they didn't want to show mercy to me. So maybe I should just behave the way that they behave to me. He hasn't given that any indication that that's the route he's going to go. He's talking about giving a pardon to Hunter Biden. He probably will. He probably will. If Joe doesn't do it first, but he probably will. Good to the country and all that. But they're hysterical. Oh, he's going to prosecute political opponents. Oh, the Supreme Court said that he has a presidential immunity. Did you guys remember Obama standing trial for droning people? Do you guys remember Joe Biden getting a trial for droning people, for kids in Afghanistan? Do you remember that? Oh, it's because obviously presidents have immunity. I'm sorry you needed the Supreme Court to tell you something that was just commonsensical. Okay? And Donald Trump's such a danger because the Supreme Court stated the obvious. Shut up.
If indeed what Fox is reporting, if that ends up being true and ends up being the case, then this conversation about who we are as a country, I was going to say will pop off in earnest, but I think we will have an answer, especially because I'm looking over your shoulder. Right now, Donald Trump has 51.2% of total votes. 51.2.
Yep, he won the popular vote. So glad that he did that too. He finally got his will, man. People don't want democracy. Shut up, man. Another thing about I'm glad Trump, winning the popular vote. You had Chris Hayes, who's trashing the Electoral College.
We have this very funky and terrible system called the Electoral College, which decides elections in a way that's totally different than every other election in the United States decided, and the way that anything's decided anywhere else in the world. We should scrap it. We have this very funky.
We absolutely should not scrap the Electoral College. But what are you going to do now that Trump won? There was a movement after Trump won in 2016 for people to start voting to move their votes, so whoever wins the popular vote will automatically get the electoral votes. I don't know if any state ended up implementing that or not, but wouldn't that be funny if like Minnesota or something had done it, and then like, oh shoot, Trump won the popular vote, so now he's going to get more electoral votes because we pledged to do that. So that was a movement. I don't remember if any states started implementing that. And when I tried to look it up real quick, I couldn't find anything, but they just need to let that go. I'm trying to think what kind of unhinged stuff should we watch now. Let's Joy Reid said that she ran a perfect campaign. Let me just play that real quick.
And so what you've seen in the last couple of weeks, if this is an audition for managing a complex organization like the United States, Kamala Harris has passed the audition flawlessly. This has been, in many ways, a perfect campaign, a brief, and she had barely any time to put it together. But just as a managerial matter, it's been brilliantly done. She's reached out to every possible constituent. And so what you've seen
brilliantly done. Seriously, I don't know why people watch her show, other than entertainment value and people clipping stuff. But those are going to be right-wing media people, right? I don't understand why someone gets up in the morning or afternoon, whenever a show airs, is like, let me put on Joy Reid for her, political expertise. I don't know why anyone would do that, but maybe you like that kind of Kool-Aid. Maybe you like that kind of Kool-Aid, okay, that you're drinking from. Okay, if that floats your boat, but just realize this woman is stupid and she's saying stupid things. She ran an objectively terrible campaign. Objectively terrible. Objectively terrible. Do you know how many Christians or just people would have sat out if they had like a normal person, or maybe would have crossed over if like Joe Manchin or something was running and not Kamala Harris? Like, people couldn't afford to sit home and do nothing. People couldn't afford to sit home and do nothing. She was so terrible. Like, and she was terrible from jump, but it just got progressively worse. I was blown away when she was asked, would you be willing to compromise with Republicans on codifying Roe v. Wade? This is a thing that they've been wanting for so long. I'm going to codify Roe v. Wade. Main like campaign promise. I'm going to codify Roe v. Wade. And so she doesn't have the votes to do that. But there are pro-choice Republicans in the Senate who'd be willing to cross over. So she was asked the question, well, would you be willing to compromise with them on something like religious exemptions? And your mind might go, why would you need religious exemptions for abortion? If you want an abortion, get an abortion. If you don't want one, don't get one. Like, what does that have to do with Christians? Why is the religious liberty issue all of a sudden? That's very strange. That's very weird. And instead of Kamala Harris saying, yeah, sure, I would be open to that, or saying she could have dodged it or whatever. She could have just said something along the lines of like, why would they need an exemption? Like, be a little confused, like, and puzzled about it. But instead she says, I don't think we should compromise on a fundamental right or fundamental freedom or whatever. So abortion, fundamental freedom, but you living life on your convictions and your beliefs and stuff, that's not fundamental freedom. That's not a fundamental right. So then my mind starts going. I'm like, okay, so what is she saying? How Christians are going to have to participate? She's saying that Catholic hospitals are going to have to do abortions, that they're going to have to make sure there's abortifacient drugs available. If you're a pharmacist, maybe you don't want to prescribe the drug or whatever. Are they going to be forced to do it or lose their job? Are you going to force Christians to pay for abortifacient drugs, or like business owners who happen to be Christian? Or are you going to go after Christian organizations and force them to pay through it for with the insurance? Because those things have happened in California already. There's been some victories or whatever for Christian groups and stuff, but those things are happening. So that's where my mind is going. I'm like, okay, so it's not now you're like directly attacking me at this point. You're directly attacking me. So this isn't a matter of I like Trump, I like Kamala. It's you are my enemy. And I thought that was so bizarre that she just went there with that, while in the same interview trying to distance herself from all of her LGBT support, when the record is clear there. The record is crystal clear. But at that point in time, Trump was hurting her with those ads. So I thought it was pretty remarkable, throwing them under the bus while going all in on abortion. And this is on top of Christians being mad about her kicking the folks who said Jesus is Lord out of her rally and saying, you guys are at the wrong rally. So this is just thing on top of thing. That was another major mistake, by the way. Another major mistake. So to say that she ran a flawless campaign, and Joy Reid went on like in a longer clip, she's like, she got Beyonce, Queen Latifah, she doesn't endorse anybody, but she endorsed, and they had Taylor Swift and Cardi B and all these celebrities who just add to the, you guys are elitists who are out of touch and you don't know what my life is like, and I'm trying to feed my kids and I'm failing. And you guys, during COVID, you guys sang songs and told us to stay home. Arnold Schwarzenegger was like, bleep your freedom. While you guys live on these ranches, like JoJo from she was a singer. She was on Dance Moms at first, but she's a singer and stuff. But she was on the Masked Singer, and while they during COVID or whatever, and they had like these extra episodes where they were like behind the scenes, and they showed her house, and she had like a candy room where she had like sprinkles painted on her wall and a bunch of different ridiculous stuff. And she's like, yeah, it's so hard to be at home with COVID stuff. I mean, there's people squeezed into like 1-bedroom apartments who can't go outside and do all kinds of stuff, and they have to stay at home, and people can't work and whatever. And you're just like, yeah, it sucks to be in this wonderful house where there's like candy painted on my wall. It's so I'm not saying you don't want to go outside and do other stuff, but rich people's COVID was way different than normal people's COVID. Way different. People losing their businesses and their stores, and you guys are saying, suck it up, you grandma killer. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. They're so out of touch. Sorry. And then you bring Beyonce on stage and she doesn't even sing. But you have Glorilla sing or rap or whatever she does, and she has to bleep every other word. Or you got Megan Thee Stallion or whoever like twerking on stage with the crop tops or in their suits and whatever. I think that was Megan. Yeah, I think that was Megan Thee Stallion. So nothing is resonating with the average person. And they're saying she ran a flawless campaign. She's not Obama. She was never going to be Obama. She was never going to be Obama. I think it's insulting to even think that. And I don't even like Obama. She didn't have it. Never did. Never did. A flawless campaign. So anyway, don't listen to Joy and don't listen to people who say things like Joy. That is delusional. It's absolutely delusional commentary if you believe that. Absolutely delusional. Let's watch Van Jones. I know I said I wasn't going to go 2 hours, but we clearly are. So let's watch Van Jones. Thank you to all of you who are watching and still here, people who popped up at some point of the stream. Hopefully we are all just still having fun together.
Because I'm thinking about the people who are not a part of anybody's elite who are hurting tonight. There are African-American women who know a little bit about being talked down to and know a little bit about having their economic.
Yes, I know what it's like to be talked down to. And people like, Van Jones can have like spotlights of good commentary to peek through the veil or whatever and offer a good 2 cents. But when they go into these like commentaries like this, yeah, I feel like I know what it's like to be talked down to. I showed you guys when we started a video I posted on TikTok, and the comments in it were crazy. Some of them weren't. Most of them were good, and most people were like, "Oh gosh, thank you," and "I'm so happy, yay, Trump 2024," or whatever. But there were people in the comments who said stuff like, "You guys are voting against your own rights. This is like chickens for KFC," and just crazy stuff like that. And like, you're voting against your own interests. I'm like, what do you mean? What rights am I losing? What are you even talking about? And then people keep pushing or whatever. And I said to somebody, I'm like, I replied to their comment and I said, Kamala Harris already tried to take away my rights. She tried to take away my Second Amendment rights. She signed an amicus brief saying that we don't have a private right for firearm use. That's my right, my God-given right that's affirmed by the Constitution. So I know you guys are talking about killing your offspring with abortion. That's what you really mean when you say we're losing our rights. Okay, that's a privilege. Women don't have a blanket right to just take someone else's life. It doesn't exist. You can grant that privilege, I guess, state to state, but it's not a God-given right, especially one that's affirmed by the Constitution and never was. It was a bad ruling, always was. You get over it. But Kamala Harris has actually tried to take away my rights. And she's a threat to my First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and so on. But they don't care because all they really mean is abortion. And then I start going back and forth with people about firearms. Like, well, why do you need guns? Like, that's not you shouldn't need that or whatever. And then there's people, then I going back and forth with some people, finding out they're like kids from the UK. So just be careful about who you argue with online, because you could be wasting your time with you can tell really quickly, I think, of how old someone is and that they're a child. I think you can tell pretty quickly. But and someone from the UK, I didn't know they're from the UK at first, but they said that Trump was a felon, and I'm like, explain his case, explain what happened, and they don't know the details because they don't know them, and it doesn't even matter. You're not even from here. But they just wanted that mantra of like, oh, 34 felony counts. Of like the same thing over and over and over again, and a misdemeanor that should have been timed out by statute of limitations that they tried to tie on to another crime, which they didn't even like nail down what it was. But they claim that he violated campaign finance because he didn't pay a porn star with his campaign funds. That's not how campaign funds work. So that's gonna be overturned anyway. It's gonna be overturned. But people just think they have all these reasons why they can hate him or should hate him. But what does that got to do with Kamala Harris being my enemy and coming for me and coming for my rights? What does it got to do with anything? What does that got to do with anything? I can understand people who don't like Trump and feel like that he's gunning for him. I know Kamala Harris is gunning for me. She made it clear. It's not hypothetical. It's not hypothetical. It's stuff that she's opposed or tried to put in the law, and she had to be stopped. She had to be stopped. It was unsuccessful. But people talk down to minorities when they step outside the box. They're so offended. And then they attack. Oh, the Republicans are the problem. Oh, Trump is a problem. When people say, you Republicans, you don't think racism exists. No, I know racism exists because I deal with you guys all the time. The allies who aren't so kind when you step out the box. Anyway, let's keep watching Van Jones cry.
Economic dreams crushed, who tried to dream a big dream over the past couple of months. And tonight they're trading in a lot of hope for a lot of hurt.
When hope was high and life was
they were
living.
hoping that maybe this time,
I dreamed that love would never die.
One of their own could be seen
I dreamed that
as worthy.
God would be forgiving.
And once again,
when I was
they're facing rejection.
Unafraid.
And that hurts. They thought tomorrow morning they're going to walk out with their shoulders back a little bit. Maybe able to breathe for the first time and feel like they belong someplace. They did everything that they knew how to do. And it's going to be harder than it should be tomorrow for them to hold their heads up. And they're not the only people who are hurting tonight. If you're a parent of a trans kid,
but the tigers come
your child's face was used as a springboard to power for somebody. That doesn't feel good. There are going to be people tomorrow who are going to be handing clothes at the dry cleaners to people who don't have papers. There are going to be people who are going to be cleaning your teeth tomorrow who don't have papers. And they're terrified tonight. And so it's easy to blow this off. Oh, look at the elite. They're going to get their comeuppance. It's not the elite that's going to pay the price. It's people who woke up this morning with a dream and are going to bed with a nightmare. And those people deserve to be respected and held and talked to. Those are the people who are going to pay the price for whatever Donald Trump decides to do.
Okay, how do we know that those people didn't vote? A large portion of those people aren't part of the people that elected Donald Trump.
Well,
right? I think that's a good part of the electorate. And the black women, the party, the Democratic Party, let those black women down. Not Donald Trump.
Look how offended he is. What? Yes, they did let them down. Thank you to those of you who said I have a nice voice. Thank you. Someone said they almost spit out their drink. I started singing over him. It just popped in my head. My sister said I should do a montage singing with stuff with them crying. Maybe I'll probably do that. I'll probably do that. So many things to do before this weekend, Comic-Con. I had a dream my life could be. I sang that song, and we didn't do like the play in high school, but the choir like did a like a homage to it or whatever. So I sang I Dreamed a Dream. So anyway, Van Jones, he mentioned businesses and black women and businesses and stuff. I was having a conversation with my sister, and she was talking about somebody who's pretty prominent in the black business realm and talking about how they thought that Trump was going to win because they said black businesses can't go through another 4 years of this. They are killing, the Biden-Harris policies are killing black businesses. They're killing a lot of businesses, but black businesses really killing them. They can't take another 4 years of it. And everybody knows that they had more money in their pockets when Trump was president. So people can be offended, but the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth. Let me share this with you guys. So when I went to the rally on Monday night, going into Tuesday morning, Kwame Kilpatrick, former, mayor of Detroit, was right in front of me. And I talked about this a bit. But I did ask him, like, what do you think's going to happen? And so he said that he thought that Trump was going to win Michigan. And I thought that was pretty incredible because, again, I'm thinking like we like crazy women in the state for some reason. So I wanted to be optimistic. So that's why I'm filling out the room or whatever. And he said when he goes to different places and have conversations with people, people don't want to admit that they're voting for Trump. But they're voting for Trump and people's different clientele are voting for Trump, even though they don't want to say, but their lives are better under Trump than it is right now. Is what it is. So that's what people are secretly saying and confiding in him about. But you know what's sad? That so many people feel like they have to keep it a secret. When you decide to put on a MAGA hat, you are making a statement. You are choosing to make a statement. And I've gone to events and people have keyed cars, or people were letting air out of people's tires and all kinds of different crazy stuff. There's different people who run for office that they said that their cars have been keyed and all kinds of different things when they go to different events and people attack and whatever. Not everything is Antifa chasing you down, trying to hit you in the head or something with some kind of crowbar or 2x4 or something. But people do all kinds of different stuff to try to terrorize you, I guess, in some kind of way. And make life difficult. Or there's people who don't want to speak up for what they believe because they'll be ostracized by their friends and their families and their coworkers, and they just keep it to themselves. But that doesn't mean that they won't go to the booth. And it's funny because Kamala Harris, they were pushing like, hey, you don't have to tell your husband how you vote. And these secret guys are secretly going to vote for Kamala Harris, as if people who are going to vote for Harris need to be quiet. Like maybe if you're some kind of rural area or something where there's a lot of Trumpers around, maybe you're the oddball out, but you're not ostracized from society for supporting Democrats in the way that Republicans or whoever is going to be ostracized. But it seems like that's going to be a really big shift since the electorate is changing and all the things. The only thing that Democrats really have a lock and key on is the white woman college educated vote, because everything else is shifting Republican. And if Democrats don't figure out how they're going to adjust, they're going to be their electorate is going to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, and they'll probably have some kind of civil war and cannibalize or whatever. But are they going to go the way of being a minority party? And who knows, maybe it's about time. But to me, it doesn't look like anyone wants to learn any lessons, and maybe they need some time to digest what happened before they can be really honest about the moves that they need to make. And by the way, in 2016, there was a lot of hysteria, but there were people who decided to take some time and think about it. And then in 2018, when they had midterms, there was like kind of this copy paste kind of a format, harmless white woman that they ran in a lot of different districts, and they had some success with. That's when like Haley Stevens, and Alyssa Slagan and whatever different folks ended up winning, in different races or whatever. And that was a time, Trump was starting to have issues with suburban white women and stuff. So they can learn and they can adjust. But right now they can't be honest with their people. Their feelings are hurt. I get it. But many of them know the truth and are not the stupid. They're not the stupid. But they say things to save face, to speak to the hearts of the electorate that they've made deranged. But many of them are smart enough to know the truth. Chuck Todd, like, he had a moment of clarity. And they're like, is this just how the Republican Party is? Or is this, are they just supporting the Republicans, or are they supporting Trump? And he's like, or are they not supporting the Democrats? Maybe they're just not supporting the Democrats. And you know what? That's true. Because a lot of Hispanics, they are, religious, and they don't like all this overreach and potential suppression and persecution they don't like all of this LGBT stuff being pushed in the schools. And by the way, when Prop 8 back in 2008 failed in California, or no, I think it passed. There was a yes vote to ban gay marriage. I think that's what it was. The reason why it passed is because the side that wanted it banned was running ads saying, hey, if gay marriage is legal, then kids are having to learn about in schools. And then the pro like gay marriage side was like, what? No, that's not true. And of course that was true. And now you have like teachers trying to hide transition stuff from the parents, and it just evolved so far from there. But there are repercussions to that. Some people just wanted to have a union and get married and make sure they can go to the hospital and visit their loved one and so on. But there was a lot of propaganda and in an attempt to really change our country and transform it in a way that's obviously gone off the rails since then. So some slippery slopes are real slick. Really, really slick. Gosh, we are at 2 hours. We're at 2 hours. Let me see. And I can't, gosh, and we're not gonna have a show tomorrow. We're not gonna have a show tomorrow. I didn't even play anything from Trump. Let me play these. Let me play Trump's speech. The first time he won, I thought it was so surreal. His speech last night was kind of like every other speech he gave. Like he started even going into the Elon's rocket speech. So I don't think I'm even going to play a clip from Trump because again we're out of time. But I'm going to play this clip from Dana White though. Dana is a good friend of Trump, and he was very loyal and gave Dana a chance with the UFC. And so Dana's very loyal to him, and he went off like saying how Trump deserves this. And I think this really sums things up really well. And also he starts talking about alternative media and how the landscape of the country has really changed. So let me go ahead and play this.
Nobody deserves this more than him, and nobody deserves this more than his family does. This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hardworking man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserved this. They deserve it as a family. I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelk Boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan. And thank you, America. Thank you. Have a good night. Nobody deserves.
So, they've come after Trump. Trump is not a perfect figure by any means, but the way that they came after him, if they would have left this man alone, if they wouldn't have raided Mar-a-Lago and all that stuff, from my understanding, he wouldn't be standing there being the president again. You know, probably be like maybe Ron DeSantis or something. But from my understanding, Trump was gonna sit it out. From my understanding, maybe that's what I had heard. But they raided Mar-a-Lago and it was like, okay, it's on. It's on. They couldn't let this man just kind of go off in the sunset. Back different candidates, do his, stuff in media and, do Truth Social, whatever. They wanted to ruin him because they never forgave him for winning the first time. They never forgave him. So they came after him with indictment after indictment after indictment. Even stuff that was really stupid, like the Bragg indictment. And it's so ridiculous that that's the thing that they convicted him on him and made him a felon. And then the crazy Rico, however you say it, case that Fonnie Willis did, but of course that's blown up because she couldn't keep it in her pants. Blew up the opportunity of a lifetime. They impeached him twice for no crime. He didn't commit any crimes. He wasn't convicted, obviously, of doing an insurrection. That was the second time he was impeached, or whatever. But the first time, it was like obstruction of Congress, Such an arrogant thing to impeach him over. Like, oh, he didn't do what you wanted. Oh, co-equal branch of government. And you're ticked off because the executive branch isn't doing all the things you want him to do. Okay. And then abuse of power. Didn't have an actual crime. That was in a high crime misdemeanor, rather. And they impeached him. And he was successful in the effort of not being impeached or kicked out, rather, because impeachment is a process. But he didn't get, removed from the presidency in either case. But they came after him. And the more they came after him, people felt attached to him and like they had to fight for him because they felt with all their heart that they didn't really hate Trump so much. They hated what he represented, and he represented the people. Again, Trump would go to different voters. This is what you want. Okay. This is what you want. Okay. This is what you want. Okay. I'm gonna make a deal. I'm going to keep this promise. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to fight for you. And I'm not going to be a choker like Mitt Romney. They're going to come at me. I'm going to come back at them just as harder. They punch. I'm going to punch back. And people wanted a fighter. And there was that meme of Trump when he's sitting down, it's black and white. He's like, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. People feel that. So when they kept coming for him, they felt like he was suffering on their behalf. And you could agree with that or not agree with that, but that is the truth for so many people who supported him. Now, there's a lot of people who didn't feel, who don't have that kind of a connection to him, and they just think that he could fix stuff and do a better job than Biden and Harris or whatever. But many people, they were maybe willing for someone else to be the president. But the more they attacked, the more they latched on. Like, oh, they're trying to make me abandon him. I got to fight harder. I can't let them win. So they fought for him. And he fought. That instinct that he had to get up and yell, fight, 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 after someone just literally tried to kill him. That's you can't teach that kind of stuff. You can't teach that. And so that's going to be the defining moment of Trump. Not January 6th and a bunch of other stuff that happened. That moment, that image, that's going to be, unless something else happens, but that's probably going to be what people think of and how he's defined as for the rest of his life, for his presidency and so on. Kamala Harris is going to be defined by there's radio silence. She's not coming out. I think by now, I think she should have already given her speech. Maybe some of you have already heard it by now. Obviously, I've been talking for 2 hours, so I haven't heard it. Address the nation. She never had it in her. She never had it in her. She just didn't. She didn't have the it factor, never did. And now she's going to kind of, I don't know what's going to happen to her. She's not a good speaker. So I don't know why people would pay her buku money to do speeches or whatever, like they did with the Clintons, while they're like basically funneling money through the Clinton Foundation. I don't know what's going to happen to her. But I know that we are now unburdened by what has been. So, Dana summed it up. Trump survived the onslaught from the left, the big machine that did everything to stop him, and it still didn't work, and he's still victorious and has this historic win. You missed. You took your shot, and you missed. And now you got another 4 years of Trump. How about trying to be honest this time around with this presidency? And don't try to sabotage everything that happens. I was interviewed by some news organization from France last night, and they said, Trump says that he wants to be president to all people. Do you think he can unify the nation? And my answer was, the nation has to want to be unified. And I said, I was at his inauguration the first time around, and he gave a great speech, and it was very unifying. And then when you watch on the news, CNN and all these folks are like, that was dark and divisive. I'm like, it wasn't dark. What are you talking about? I was there. It wasn't a dark speech, but they don't expect other people to go read it and look at it. And maybe if they even looked at it, they still have TDS. but it wasn't a dark and divisive speech. But they wanted people to feel that way, like it was a tyrant coming on the scene. And they've been calling him a Nazi and a dictator and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, she called to concede. Like, and Mark Cuban was like, you won fair and square. You don't treat people who are about to destroy the country because they're a dictator and a white supremacist and a Nazi and stuff with dignity and respect and like, fair game, you won. It just goes to show you that they were full of crap and they didn't care that they were making all these Democrats mentally unhinged. They didn't care. They just wanted to win and hope you bought it. And unfortunately, many people bought it and people are crying and screaming online. I don't have a compilation video ready for you guys. Maybe we'll do that on Monday or something. But they don't care. Like, you don't put on a MAGA hat if you think that the guy running is a fascist or Hitler or whatever. You don't do that. You don't do that. The people have their say, but at the same time, you don't do that. They're not treating him like he's literally Hitler and a fascist or whatever. They were just saying stuff. They didn't believe it. They didn't believe it. So I'm so glad that they're punished for their lies and their behavior, because Trump's victory is the only retribution, unfortunately, in these situations. But at least she lost. And hopefully the media will readjust. I don't think they will, because they never really did. They never did. They just sought to destroy him. Russia collusion, etc. But hopefully they will readjust, because people like Jeff Bezos doesn't want to keep writing checks and losing all this money and seeing that. It's funny because they're like, we reported all this stuff, but the people didn't believe us. There must be a problem here. The problem is you. The problem is you. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being with me today for this very long show, because now we're going over 2 hours. And so I don't want to take too long of a closing, but I so very much appreciate everyone watching and commenting and being here today, and your super chats and your support, and people who go on the website blacktnews.com/donate and donate there. I thank you guys so much. Thank you to guys who are subscribed to the newsletter. Those of you who like and share, make sure you are subscribed and you hit the notification bells and so on. But I thank you for taking the time to watch my stuff and to listen to my commentary. There's so many different options out there. I'm flattered that you care. And thank you to those of you who reached out and thanked me for what I do. It feels good to be appreciated. I guess I would do it regardless, because I'm trying to make a difference. And I hope that I have. So, and I'll continue growing so I can make a bigger difference. I'm really grateful to different other alternative media, like, Joe Rogan and other people who were named, who really allowed Trump and JD Vance to have an opportunity to humanize themselves and see a different side. And that made a whirlwind of difference. So the mainstream media is on life support, and they have to readjust or they're going to totally lose. I'm so grateful to Elon Musk for buying buying Twitter, which he basically started that process because some twerp on Twitter decided to freeze the Babylon Bees page because they gave, Rachel Levine Man of the Year award. And it's supposed, the joke is that he's actually a man and he's parading around as a woman. So they, froze their account. They're like, well, we're not taking this down because this is true that he's a man. So we're going to stand our ground. If we can't use this page, we just can't use this page. And Elon Musk didn't like that. And someone's like, well, maybe you should buy Twitter. And he's like, maybe I will. And he did. And the rest is history. And there's so much what we found out about the media and the government and social media and the collusion and the censorship. And I'm glad that we found that out. But so many people get their news from X. And I was just like going to Decision Desk. I was in a room where they were playing Fox News, but Decision Desk was coming out with information before Fox was. They're like, oh, we can call North Carolina. I'm like, well, we already knew that. He got that. Like, what are you talking about? You're so far behind. So, there was just so much news and information that people were just getting from, like, there's a couple trusted accounts that I follow, you know, and you want to verify stuff too before you like really start sharing stuff. But, you know, a lot of news people get from X. So I'm very grateful to all these different sources of media and, you know, doing my small part in it. And, you know, I believe Black Teen News will continue to grow. Thank you guys. I will not be streaming tomorrow and Friday. I will be at Motor City Comic Con this weekend. If you're in Michigan, you know, I'll be there in Artist Alley, and you guys can check out some of my books. I have 18 that are published all together. 2 are nonfiction. One of my nonfiction books is, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, which covers obviously theology, but rights and science. And someone at the end of the show was like, God, how's God against abortion if there was, you know, he killed the firstborn of Egypt and stuff? That objection is in this book. I cover a lot of stuff in it. So the long story short, there's a big difference between God being sovereign and being able to do what he wills with his creation and issue judgment versus you killing his creation, an image bearer of God, for your convenience in most cases. So it handles a lot of those different things that people bring up and talk about and so on, but it talks about rights and science and religion and why it's important to treat people as if they have inherent value and so on. So I encourage you guys to check it out. The rest of my books are, most of my other books are fiction, all kinds of different genres I love to write about. In the description of, if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, there's a link that will take you to my Amazon, to an Amazon page where all my books are at. But if you go to blackteennews.com in the merchandise page, there's a banner that will take you to my book website where you guys can learn more. I did make an advisory page for parents because sometimes they ask if it's appropriate for their kids. And I explain, like, you know, things that might be controversial or not controversial. I just want to, you know, let parents know so they can go ahead and make a decision. So there's lots of info out there. Thank you to those of you who've gotten some of my books. I know some of your kids like Super Kid and other stuff that I've, you know, made. So I appreciate that. And, yeah, I expect to have a good weekend. It'll be a long weekend, and hopefully tonight I'll get some sleep, more than 3 hours. It's funny because I'm not really that tired right now, but maybe it's just the kind of the high of the moment, whatever. But I'm like living off of Trump hours because I think he still only sleeps 4 hours a night, which is insane. I don't know how he's not crazy, but anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you on Monday.